coming up on WordBirds.
So the argument is that marketing owns channels, right? Communication owns the message.
Hello and welcome to WordBirds, a birds of a feather conversation amongst people who care about words. Today on the show, Nikki Festa O'Brien. Nikki is the president of the brand marketing and PR agency Greenough, right here in Massachusetts. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the death of the Blog Carnival initiative, and we're going to answer the question of, is the press release actually dead? And the final thing, and this is very questionable, is we're going to visit the dark future of the CMO title. Yep, that's what she said. Let's sit back and get some insight from the fly.
What could you do with a 90% reduction in content errors, a 70% increase in content quality, and a 60% reduction in content editing costs? Probably what our customers are already doing. And that's creating better content faster. Acrolinks, the amazing content company.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
This is a first. We're actually doing WordBirds today live. This is
Yes.
Friends of the Birds season. I'm excited for you to be literally here in the office with me. Third camera. Great. Let's jump right into the quick start.
Awesome.
Let's talk about your best and most successful campaign.
Yes. Anything with executive thought leadership. When I'm working with an executive about how they feel about a certain topic, what they'd like to move forward, messaging that they're testing, things like that, it's always the best campaign that I've worked on, and I always think that we both learn a little something from the process.
Okay. What's the worst? What's the big failure in your world?
So funny. I was at Inbound last week and was just talking to somebody about my worst campaign. It was something that used to be called a blog carnival.
Okay.
And the healthcare company who was trying to sort of trend jack HIMSS, which is their, healthcare's major conference. And they weren't going to be there, but they thought, well, why don't we need something that brings all of our partners and customers together and takes over HIMSS. So blog carnivals were big for like 10 seconds during that period of time.
I missed that entire
Yes,
thing.
yeah, it was a very quick moment in time, and we had it. Basically, what it is that everyone in your network writes a blog, right? This is pre LinkedIn being a big deal,
Okay.
definitely pre TikTok, all of that, and then everybody writes it and tags each other. So there's like a rolling thunder approach.
Oh.
The reason why it was the worst campaign, well, there's many reasons. The biggest one is that it was too complicated. Campaigns need to be simple to execute to have impact. And, the one person couldn't tag the other person because they didn't do what they were supposed to do in time for the posting and publishing of their blog. So it just fell apart before it even got off the runway.
So I'm just glad that wasn't back in the era of us at Perfecto.
Yes.
I don't remember you ever pitching that as a concept.
No,
so
no.
okay.
Yes, learn that lesson.
That's good. So out of the two of those, out of the thought leadership programs and the blog carnival, as it were, which one did you learn the most from?
So the obvious answer is the worst, right? You always say you learn from failure and you know never to do it again. But I'm going to go ahead and say the best.
Fantastic.
The reason being is that when you have a long-term standing relationship with someone, you have to recreate something new over and over and over again. And failures usually they're a flash in the pan. You probably don't work with that company anymore because you failed or there's some sort of endpoint that ends up happening based on that bad experience when it's really the long-term relationships you learn the most from because you know more after the first year, right? And you have to literally reinvent yourself, reinvent the program, reinvent the campaign, reinvent the content or the activation for their audience, for 3, 5, 7, 10 years, which is typically the time period in which I work with my clients. And so definitely on the best side.
And I think on the topic of executive thought leadership, I think it's interesting because you need to, like when I hire somebody, it takes them time to get up to speed.
Sure.
I feel like you don't get that, A, and B, you need to be them. You need to
Mm-hmm.
know, like, just so we're all clear, I'm a client of Greenough,
Yeah.
and your team needs to be inside my head and sound like me and know my opinions, because I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not responsive.
Yeah.
Allie sends me something and I'm like, yeah, it seems fine, send it back. And so it's on you from moment one
Yeah.
to be able to be the people that you're representing.
Yeah.
How does that work? I mean, do you have examples of that just being amazingly perfect?
Sure. My favorite part of that experience, and you and I have had some fun times in this area too, together, is actually discussing how the executive would actually respond to something.
Sure.
And it becomes a me versus me moment. And that's when I know we're doing our job right.
Right.
But it's also so much fun to say, no, you wouldn't actually say that. You would say this if you were asked that question. Or you would actually use this example. Remember when you did this? And I've worked with Fortune 500 technology companies, healthcare companies, life sciences companies. In every instance, it ends up in laughter because it's literally you looking at you in a mirror and debating whether or not you would say something or how you'd react to
Well, and
it.
it's worse than that, because you've had the time to strategize. You've sat down with the team and you've
Yeah.
talked about what I would say. I haven't. And I'm
Right,
just, no,
right,
I
off
want to
the
say
cuff,
this.
right.
And like, you don't want to say that. And there's so many moments, especially in my life, where I
Yeah.
would like somebody to just follow me around and be like, hey, you should
Yeah.
lock it up.
Yeah.
You don't need to
Use
say
this
this.
example instead. Yeah.
Is what you're going to say.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fantastic skill that I get from you and what you do. You're a different type of guest than we have in the show
Sure.
on purpose, because I think that when we talk about enterprise content strategy,
Sure.
which is the majority of the people that come on the show we talk about, it's about creating the brand, filling the brand with content. You are standing on the other side of a fence,
Yeah.
trying to do that same thing.
Yeah.
I've never looked at your teams as a separate organization. You're just on. We talk in terms
Sure.
of us and what we're doing, but that's not real from where you're sitting. You're trying to be a thing and be part of my overall content delivery mechanism.
Yeah.
And I think that's got to be a challenge, because I hope I'm not your only client. So you're doing that across multiple organizations. How do you manage being a viable and domain part of everybody's team at the
Sure.
same time?
Yeah, it's funny. So I've worked agency side almost my entire career. So this is like asking, how do you just eat with a fork,
Fair.
But I think one of the things that's always good and part of every successful relationship is that initial onboarding and discovery. If you've done that well, it is a second nature, right? It becomes a file in your brain and you access that file, and that's the sort of performance that you're doing at that moment. I'm big into the method acting, right? So today I will be Acrolinks forever.
So this is your Acrolinks outfit.
This is
when
my
you go.
Acrolinks. Yes. This is my Acrolinks outfit. This is my Acrolinks vibe. I'm in my Barbie / Acrolinks era with the hot pink. So, but yeah, I think that's the foundational success element of that piece, because if you didn't learn what you needed to understand about the brand, about the executive, about the customers and the personas that you're targeting in that formative area, you'll never have learned it, right? You'll always be just left of hitting the mark. And once you've done that, it's like any relationship that you're in. You remember where they're from. You remember what they do for a living. You remember what they like and dislike. So it's the same thing.
So that was a leading question, and it went where I thought it would, for the purposes of, for me and what I do.
Sure.
Like, I have one product, but I do have multiple personas. I do have multiple use cases. I
Sure.
do have multiple industries that I sell to. And the thing that you said, and the core to your statement, is it was about the planning process. It's
Yeah.
about identifying all of that, building out the models for each one of those, being able to accurately communicate those across the team, and having people internalize those messages. We, I think, in B2B software struggle with that, because we don't think about having multiple clients that I need to be native to on any given day. You're going to walk out of here, you're going to walk in someplace else, you're going to change your jacket and be a different person in a different team. And going all the way back to the beginning of the process and identifying what is the thing, who is it for, what are we talking about, key points, so that I can be native in domain, and then enable my teams to be native in domain and create content that is native in domain to that space on a one-by-one basis so that I'm effective everywhere. I think that's such a challenge for companies that you, like you said, do as if it's just using a fork.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that. I think what I'm saying is you should be in an advisory role helping companies create their content strategies, which I guess technically you are.
Yeah.
But that's the takeaway for our listeners, is that it matters. The planning matters. The structure matters. The framework matters to deliver the message that becomes the premium content, that becomes the derivatives. I understand that there's a thing happening with generative technology, and we can create all this derivative content from great content.
Yeah.
It starts with having great content, though.
It does. And I would advise your listeners to consider asking a couple personal questions at the outset of whoever you're sitting with, right? There's always some sort of intake call or meeting that happens, an immersive experience that they're
Is this
doing.
going to get creepy?
No.
Okay.
Well, we can get weird if you want it.
Fantastic.
But there's some sort of immersive experience that happens so that they can get the information they need to then write, said content.
Right.
And the questions that I generally ask are, what brand out there is doing something that you really like, and why? Right? So now you're starting to understand their tone, the way that they think. Do they like sort of short, pithy sort of content, or do they like more elongated, illustrative content? What don't you like? Why? And then also, what's your favorite thing to do outside of work? Right? Are they hikers? Are they CrossFitters? Are they
Who would do that?
Foodies, things like that, because that actually says a lot about the person and the kind of drive that they have, or the sort of interest areas that, maybe they do something really creative. You have these awesome pictures on your wall, and I was told that one of your
Noah.
Yeah, right. One of your employees did that. And, okay, I actually know Noah now. I can see it in every one of those photos, and the fact that that's something he likes to do. And that can be reflected in the content that you're writing for that person, that department, that brand.
Interesting. I mean, it's there. I think we all have a lot to do in really understanding how to build that model. I think this is super helpful. Let's talk about, the idea of a public relations agency. People think, oh, the press release.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Like, is that the thing?
Sometimes it is,
Is it?
Yes, it's unfortunately, yes. And I think it comes from a place in which they don't fully grasp the power behind the communications field, the many different facets, the different channels that we can be impacting, and the types of content that we could be putting out there that could be even more impactful for their target persona.
I just find it fun when people in the company say that don't work in marketing or communications, like, let's do a press release. Okay, what do you mean by that?
Yeah,
because
right.
I think what you're saying is a blog article.
Yeah.
Like, I think you want me to put something on our website.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that I put this on the wire?
Right.
Like, do you want me to shop this around, get a pre-release to something? Like, I can't do that. I don't have that reach. And people don't understand that. It's like, we're going to do a press release.
Yeah. And ultimately what they're asking for is to own a message, right? They're asking to own a message, define it for their audience, and educate folks so that when we go in to tell them about acrolinks, for example, they already are they're already familiar. They already know what a benefit is, or they already know roughly what area or space that they're talking about. So whether it's press release, whether it's a blog, whether it's a video series, a piece of social content, whatever that may be, those are simply ways to own a message, ways to educate an audience, and ways to target specifically who they want to speak to and move them along the journey.
Point release of a software product with an increased value and an integration. Press release?
No.
No. Blog article, maybe. But I think that's the balance between, and what's not understood is the balance between an awareness campaign
Yeah.
and a press release.
Yeah.
Like, it's not newsworthy. The Wall Street Journal does not care about your point release.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a thing. They don't care about Salesforce's point
Sure.
release. But could I do a campaign that builds awareness? It gets the
Right.
result that the people that asked for the press release thought they
Right.
wanted in the first place. Yes, and that's a whole different area. And that's a thing that, I mean, to be fair to the audience, that's a thing that we're going to be talking about here today. After this is the idea of awareness campaigns
Yeah.
to drive some of our messaging out there. That
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, I'd love the Wall Street Journal to write about it, but I think we need to do that work.
Yeah.
It needs to be part of our content strategy to drive that out there
Sure.
through awareness channels.
Sure. I would argue a point release in B2B software is best served for maybe some sort of demo video with their community, right?
Yep.
So because that's who's using it, that's who's going to be excited that they're getting something improved amongst a software they're already using.
So a brand new enterprise net new logo is not super interested in a point release?
No. But what they may be interested in is that you might have advanced something in your product that's bigger than the product, right? So every client in the world is asking us to write Gen AI messaging,
Yeah,
right?
that's a thing,
Right?
as it turns out.
Voice search, things like that. So you'll want to talk to your community about that in their dot release and what that means for them and the great functionality for that. But from a thought leadership perspective, that might be a really great thing for the CEO to talk about the vision of that company and why they're streamlining the user interface of their product by enabling voice search or having Gen AI.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I got a thing. It's called the provocative statement of the day, the PSOTD.
Sure.
So I use it to put concepts out on the table. Like, for instance, this morning, literally this morning,
Yeah.
I have some opinions on packaging.
Yeah.
I don't know if I feel them,
Okay.
but I want us to talk about them. So
All
the
right.
provocative statement of the day puts it out on the table, distances me from it, but it doesn't distance me that far. It's
Sure.
something I think, maybe I believe, but I don't know if everybody else does, so I'm just shoving it out there.
Okay.
What is your provocative statement of the day?
This feels like a trick because
Maybe.
you want to disagree with me.
I do. I want to fight you.
I know.
I'm ready.
Okay. I think that communications should not only have a seat at the table, but that marketing should roll up into comms versus roll into
Oh shit.
versus
Okay.
into marketing.
Go on. Explain yourself. This is. Oh, so wait. There's a chief communications officer that manages the VP of marketing.
Yeah, 100% what I'm saying.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. Go on.
So here's my thought process
Yep.
on this. Comms is the first to know everything.
Okay.
Personnel issues, SEC investigations, S1 forms when you're going public. All of those things go to comms almost first because they need to write every message that comes after it, whether it's the CEO talking to the employees, whether it's the CEO making a statement publicly, whether it's go ahead.
I want to argue with you, but I mean, what you're saying is not inaccurate. I'm thinking back over the history of my career, and the tip of the spear moments are in communications. It's drafting crisis content.
Yes.
It's any number of things where, you know, the hiring of a new executive leader in a company, like all these things tie to the big things in company strategy. But how do you reconcile that against, for instance, I as a CMO, I'm very tied to revenue.
Yeah.
So I own pipeline. I'm part of the stream of top of funnel
Sure.
through to the sales organization.
Yeah.
That seems like I want that to be the thing.
Yeah.
It's not the thing.
So the argument is that marketing owns channels, right? Communication owns the message. So if we own the message, we are most well read on your personas. We're the most well read on what the entire executive team's positions are. We know what's coming down the pipe that marketing doesn't. That could be maybe an issue in what is said or how something's positioned. And so marketing owns the channel in which these messages are facilitated and amplified, but comms owns what's being said on them.
Wow. If I had an award statue, this is by far the most provocative statement of the day. You win. You've won. People that are listening that have been on the show are like, oh, damn, I lost. That was the provocative statement.
Okay.
Not to say that the others weren't good, but this
Yeah.
crushed it. Nikki, thank you for being on the show.
Thank
This
you
was
so much.
phenomenal. We'll definitely do this again.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Thanks for listening to WordBirds. WordBirds is hosted by Chris Willis, produced by Charlotte Baxter Reed, and brought to you by Acrolinks. For more information on Acrolinks, visit www.acrolinks.com.